What is up, New York Giants fans? Thank you for tuning in to another very special victory episode of Tommy's Takes. I'm your host, Tommy G. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. Please like, subscribe, turn on notifications, make sure you're the first to get the content as soon as it drops. Check me out on Twitter at TommyG105. Also, please do check out the Giants Country team, talented crew of content creators dropping articles, videos, interviews, you name it. We got the Giants content covered. Please lock in there. For everybody that already has, thank you. Without further ado, wow. Another win by the cardiac comeback kids, New York Giants. Unbelievable. Again, following the same formula, hang in tight, keep it close, play tough, and finish strong. And that they did. And they pull off another come from behind victory, their fifth comeback victory of the season, and the New York Giants are now 6-1, their best record since 2008. If everybody remembers 2008, that was the year after the Super Bowl, where unfortunately Plaxico shot himself accidentally and things were never the same. But here they are, the New York Football Giants in the middle and the beginning of a rebuild, and really unbelievable on the road today in Jacksonville. Things weren't going their way, struggled to get the run going in the first half, injury upon injury upon injury. And if you're a constant consumer of this show, we pretty much talk about injuries every single episode. Today was no difference. Only difference was you seen the maturation of Daniel Jones and potentially turning into a franchise quarterback for this team. And there's been a lot to say from both sides of the Jones debate, view, argument, whatever you want to call it. Those that never thought he was a franchise quarterback, those that have believed in him but didn't really have the wins or the statistics to back it up. Well, today you saw it, and he's progressed every single game so far in Kafka's offensive system, and today was no different. He's down two offensive linemen, down his security blanket tight end in Daniel Bellinger, already down three starting wide receivers, and it didn't faze Daniel Jones one bit. He stuck in there, didn't make a lot of critical mistakes, made some big-time throws, ran for 100 yards. Rare for a quarterback to run for 100 yards, and it's rare to have a quarterback that could do both like that. That's kind of what makes Daniel Jones unique and different from some other good quarterbacks out there. And I think that's kind of a fact that has been overlooked by some Giants fans that didn't see the 300 yards passing, 3-4 touchdown games from him. But really remarkable. Let's get started. Let's dig right into the game. It was an exciting game. Giants come right out. First drive. Really was a nice drive. 75-yard drive. Jones goes 6 for 7, 65 yards. It was the Giants' first opening drive touchdown in 14 games, dating back to the Joe Judge era. So you're sitting there. It's an awesome drive. Giants are up 7-0. And what happens after the 32-yard touchdown to Slayton, which was a beautiful throw by Daniel Jones, bobbled but caught by Slayton. Got to give him credit for that because drops were a huge issue in his game. And drops almost cost this New York Giants team this victory. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. Slayton catches it, holds on to it, 75-yard drive, boom, boom, boom. Unfortunately, you're starting to see a trend here also with the Giants defense, and they've essentially been bend but don't break, which you can't really fault Wink Martindale in this defense. Really don't have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, especially at linebacker. Today was another game where the linebacking core was exposed, and it was tough to watch against the running game. We'll get to that also later in the show. But Jags come right back, right down the field. Travis Etienne, who the Giants had a well of a day trying to stop him. He topped 100 yards. He scores on a 7-yard touchdown run on that play. And it was a bad start for the Giants. Penalty on the Giants before the extra point. Jags say, hey, we'll go for two. And, before you could blink after this awesome opening offensive touchdown, the Jags are up 8-7, right? So, but give it credit to the Giants. Didn't deter them. They came right down the field, Jacksonville, and got the 2-point conversion. Rest of the first half was a field goal fest. There were some interesting things that were mixed in there. The Jaguars had another drive that was looking to result in a touchdown. Etienne running it in, and Xavier McKinney with a nice little peanut punch to knock it out. And the Giants recovered for a touchback. So that was big. You're going to see a few plays I'm going to go through here where when you look back at it, it's almost like, I don't want to use the phrase team of destiny or anything like that with the Giants because they are in a rebuild. They did lose some more significant pieces today to the starting lineup, but when you look back on it, that punch out of the end zone, the Giants recovered a fumble. That was going to be a touchdown drive. Athene was going in. If he doesn't score right there, which I think he might, they're going to score on that drive. And then who knows what happens. But first half, other than that, was pretty uneventful. You did see a lot of drops by the Giants. Giants could not get their running game going. Saquon Barkley, and listen to this because I'm going to get back to this later in the show. Saquon Barkley had 18 yards rushing at halftime. Struggled, couldn't get anything going. Jaguars coming in with one of the best run defenses in the league, only allowing 3.6 yards per carry. So they lived up to their hype in the first half, but it was a field goal fest for the rest of the half. And when you really look at it, it almost felt like the Giants were lucky to still be in that game. The Jaguars had a lot of energy. They played with a lot of passion. They played with a lot of physicality. In my humble opinion, I thought their physicality went too far in the game. There were a lot of ankle twisters in there. They call it the alligator twist, whatever you want to call it, where when you're tackling the offensive player and you kind of just twist their ankle up. There were a couple of eye gouges in there mixed in between. And Giants really took the worst part of that. They lost Daniel Bellinger, unfortunately, which was just a brutal eye injury. I mean, they showed him on the cart. His eyes swollen shut, blood coming out. Prayers up to Daniel Bellinger. He's been such a revelation for this team as a rookie. The Giants definitely missed him out there today. That was a tough one. You had Evan Neal, got rolled up on the back. They almost brought the card out for him. That was a knee injury. You had Ben Bredesen before that go out with a knee injury. So, you're going into the second half and you're missing 2 starting offensive linemen. You're missing starting tight end who's still a rookie, and a team that doesn't have a lot of depth and didn't have a lot of talent because of the cap issues. Already down 3 players going into the second half. So how would the Giants respond? How they've responded all year. And this team is really taking shape, and they're taking the image of their head coach, their coaching staff, and this team never gives up. And even when the second half started, the Jaguars come right down the field. They got the ball first. 7 plays, 68 yards. It was highlighted by a 51-yard run by Travis Athene. Evan Ingram was all over the place today. And, of course, Giants let him loose this offseason. He signs with Jacksonville, and he has an amazing game today. Catching everything, didn't drop anything. Really hurt the Giants in the middle of the field. And, the Giants linebacking core is not good. And, Landon Collins saw some time today. He had a couple of nice plays. But this is not good. And when you look at it, you have Tay Crowder starting. He was Mr. Irrelevant. He's, I would say, mediocre at best. He's active, but he does make a lot of bad reads, bad decisions, bad adjustments. You have Jalen Smith, picked up off the street a couple of weeks ago. No knock to him by saying that, but he wasn't on an NFL team. And same thing now with Landon Collins. So this Giants linebacking core is struggling, and hopefully Landon Collins, as he gets comfortable, can help. But that first drive, Jacksonville just right down their throat. And, it was tough because you come out of the first half and you have the lead and you had all the injuries and you're feeling good. And here comes Jacksonville, boom, 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 highlighted by a huge run by Athene. He really had a big day for Jacksonville. And I had a feeling he would hurt the Giants. The Giants have been hurt by that change of pace back. Whether it was Tony Pollard, playing Dallas, whether it was Kenyon Drake, playing the Ravens. The Giants have been hurt by that scat change of pace back. And that's something that Wink has to take a look at and figure out, because Athene was the same thing today. The Giants could not stop him. That score ended up putting the Jaguars on top 17-13, missed the extra point. And, when you're the Giants now, you're down 17-13, looking tough. You got the injuries. The running game is not going. Everything is against you. The home crowd is loud. They're getting into it. And again, what you've seen in 6 games this season, 6 victories, nothing phases this New York Giants team. And that was the same case today. At the drop of a hat, this team just came alive. And it was Daniel Jones, it was Saquon Barkley, both utilizing their legs. Barkley ended up with almost 100 yards in the second half. He had 24 carries for 110 yards total. So he had almost 100 yards in the second half alone. Really remarkable. 4.6 yards per carry. You had Daniel Jones, 11 carries, 107 yards, 9.7 yards per carry for the Giants quarterback. And they utilized this in the second half. They did have a tough drive where, like I said, drops killed this Giants team this game. Giants drive all the way down the field. They get inside the goal line. They want to go for it on 4th and short on the goal line. I think it was on the 2-yard line. They hit a quick slant to Marcus Johnson, hits him right in the chest, and he drops it. Giants turn the ball over on downs. Really looking tough after that one. But again, Giants not phased. This was, if you really think about it, this was probably one of the harder comebacks so far for the Giants, just because they're on the road, they're struggling, the injuries are piling up, they're not getting the running game going, and all of a sudden, little by little, this Giants team got their confidence back in the second half. After that 4th and 1 stop, Jones and Barkley, 10 plays, 79 yards, highlighted by a 24-yard run by Daniel Jones, an 18-yard run by Barkley, both of them breaking tackles, stiff arms. It was really an exhibition in rushing offense for the New York Giants today. And the Giants came in, I believe, second in the NFL in rushing offense, and they showed today they're a pure rushing team. And Daniel Jones, give him credit, he had 200 yards passing, a passing touchdown, but the second half game plan was feed Barkley, get Jones open in space on the RPOs. There were a couple of RPOs he could have took to the house if he kept the ball, Jones, and they just wore Jacksonville down. And Jacksonville had no answer for Barkley or Jones in that second half. The Giants score on that touchdown drive, and they took the lead and they never looked back. It got scary. It got scary when the Jaguars were with less than 1 minute left, and 3 defensive penalties on the New York Giants. You had a penalty on Dane Belton. You had a penalty on Dexter Lawrence, which was a brutal penalty, a brutal roughing the passer. The penalty on Belton wiped out a Fabian Moreau game-sealing interception. And before you know it, the Jaguars are on the Giants' 15-yard line with 12 seconds left. And they complete. The first pass was incomplete, about 7 seconds left. The second pass, they completed, and Kirk was tackled on the 1-yard line. So this game literally came down to the 1-yard line for the New York Giants and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Really exciting game. Giants win 6-1, best record since 2008. Remarkable comeback, staying in this game. Like I said, nothing phases them. Doesn't matter how many injuries. Doesn't matter the score. If they're down in the third, if they're down in the fourth. Daniel Jones with his 5th come-from-behind victory this season. And you got to give the quarterback of the New York Giants his credit. Really starting to look like he's developing into a franchise quarterback. You've seen him show some emotion today when Marcus Johnson drops that goal line pass that he should have caught. And at the very least would have been a 1st and goal for the Giants. Instead, they turned the ball over. You could see him look towards Johnson and say, catch the ball. Don't see that a lot from Daniel Jones. Looks like he's getting more comfortable in his role as a leader on this team because he's playing well. And sometimes, most of the time, to be a good leader, you need to play well, and you need to put up stats, and you need to be there for your team, and you need to make those crunch plays. When you're having strip fumbles and throwing interceptions to defensive tackles, not a lot of people are going to take you serious as a captain. But that Daniel Jones doesn't exist anymore on this Giants team. You see a quarterback now that's confident, smart, very careful with the ball. He did have an interception today that was wiped out. But you know what? I would take that interception. It was a quick, decisive throw and decision. Linebacker was Devin Lloyd was kind of tucked away behind the O-line and the D-line. Jones didn't see him. It wasn't one of those plays where it was a misread, where it was a terrible throw, where it was a bad decision. But either way, it got wiped out. And Daniel Jones, another game this season with no turnovers. And if you look at his turnovers, he had the tough game versus Tennessee where he got strip sacked for a fumble. He threw the brutal interception in the end zone. And I think that interception in the end zone and the corresponding conversation by Brian Dable on the sidelines, I think sparked something in Daniel Jones because ever since then, he has been a different quarterback. The turnovers he had a pick versus Dallas where Sills was running a deep dig route, slips, falls, corner gets an easy interception. He had a fumble on a Hail Mary play where he was hit from behind. So Jones has really been remarkable. He hasn't had a real pure turnover that was his fault since week 1. And this is a quarterback that struggled with turnovers, struggled with fumbles, was mocked constantly, and sometimes deservedly so because he had some brutal ones. But this is the different quarterback of the New York Giants right now. He's confident. He's engaged. He's making plays with his legs. 100 yards rushing today. Unbelievable. He was injured a few weeks ago with the ankle, and here he is rushing for 100 yards versus a tough rush defense in Jacksonville. This is not a rush defense that gives up a lot of rush yards, and he went straight at them. There was a play where he stiff-armed Josh Allen away from him and pushed him away. So, for those that were against Jones continuing his career with the New York Giants after the fifth-year option wasn't picked up by Joe Schoen, you might have to do a double take here because this is twofold. Not only is Jones playing his way into the good graces of the coaching staff and the GM, he's winning football games. And for every football game he wins, that's one draft spot further and further away from being enticed to take one of the rookie quarterbacks that are coming out. Could the Giants trade and work? Of course, but Jones is doing himself a service in both areas and really, really remarkable. And it's fun to watch, to see him grow. And not everybody grows at the same rate. There's always comparisons when we talk about football players. And, Kyler Murray started out quick, and everybody loved Kyler Murray, and he's struggling now. You have quarterbacks that take a little longer to develop, like an Aaron Rodgers didn't see the field. He took a little longer to develop. Josh Allen from Buffalo, he struggled in his first couple of seasons, but he's developing. So I think you have to like what you see as a New York Giants fan. I know the coaching staff has to be happy. And I know Daniel Jones has to be elated. Seeing him in the locker room, they wanted to give him to give a speech. They were kind of ribbing him. He didn't. But really nice to see. And then Saquon Barkley. I talked on the show on the last episode that the last couple of seasons when the running game didn't get going, it never got going. And, if it wasn't good in the first half, it was never going to get going. They'd either abandon it or they'd send Saquon straight up the middle to slam into some defensive tackles. Well, that's not this offense. That's not this running back because you've seen it especially today. He had 28 yards rushing in the first half and almost 100 yards rushing in the second half. And he had some huge runs, especially on the last Giants drive, which he kept running out of bounds, which I'm not sure made sense either way here or there. But he had some chunk. He had a 9-yard carry, an 18-yard carry. And between Jones and Barkley, they accounted for 444 yards of offense today. The 2018, 2019 top draft picks of the New York Giants are carrying this team to victory. So when you talk about a rebuild, and when you say this team is in a rebuild, in a lot of ways they are. But when you really look deeper into it, they should have never been in a rebuild. This team is drafted in the top 10 for year after year after year. They spent a lot of money in free agency last year to go after Galladay, Adoree. So this team should not be a rebuilding team. But because players weren't developing and players were getting injured and free agent players weren't working out, it turned into a rebuild. But this shows you how remarkable coaching can be because this coaching staff is getting every little bit out of Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Dexter Lawrence. You can go on and on and on. And let's talk about the defense for a second. I did want to get into the defense for the Giants. It was a tough day. It was a characteristic day for the Giants defense. They've been bend but don't break in all 7 games so far this season. This one was a little tougher. Again, pounded on the ground. You had some missed tackles. You had some penalties. Not a lot of pressure today for the Giants. Before the game, the day before the game, you see Azeez Ojulari is placed on injured reserve. He's out 4 games, obviously including today's game. Zimenez was not playing today either, and the Giants felt that. There was very little pressure until late in the fourth quarter when Thibodeau started getting going, and Thibodeau did bring a lot of pressure on Lawrence that last drive, and he's kind of becoming the closer for the Giants defense, but not a lot of pressure, and when there's not a lot of pressure up front, you allow a quarterback to pick you apart, and that's what Trevor Lawrence did for the most part. He finished 22 of 43 for 310 yards. Didn't have any rushing yards. I made a comment. I tweeted that he was a non-mobile quarterback, not meaning that he can't do it, but he hasn't done it. That's not how they use him, so he's non-mobile. That's not something they feature with him. He's good at quarterback sneaks. He had 4 rushes for 3 yards today. Trevor Lawrence, but looked good in the passing lanes. In the passing game, he did have 21 incompletions, which is a lot. And shout out to the Giants secondary; they had some awesome pass breakups. Adoree, Moreau had some nice breakups out there. Xavier McKinney was active out there. But like what you see out of Trevor Lawrence, I thought he looked like a good quarterback. It's my first time really watching a full game of him. But when it counted and when the Giants needed to get the stop, they got the stop. And Christian Kirk, the number 1 receiver for Jacksonville, 7 catches, 96 yards. He had a big game in between there, but the Jags were throwing it a ton the second half. But the defense of the Giants did a pretty good job overall, not breaking fully, right? So they only gave up 17 points. If you look at that on paper, you say the defense did a really good job today. But you did have the punch out right before a red zone by Xavier McKinney on a theme. That could have been another touchdown. And you also had a couple plays here and there that there were receivers open for Jacksonville, and Trevor Lawrence couldn't hit him. So this defense needs a lot of work. Unfortunately, I don't see the defense overhauling who they are now within the season. Kind of they are what they are. You know, you hope some players get back healthy. They're missing two cornerbacks in Aaron Robinson and Cordero Flott. They're missing two edge defenders in Zimenez and Aziz. It just seems like this team could never get fully healthy. I think when you start getting a couple of those players back, you hope you don't lose any others, I think you'll start to see the defense progress a little bit. But overall, the defense is the Achilles heel of the team now, I believe, because the offense today, 23 points, could have really scored 30 points again if Marcus Johnson doesn't drop that goal line pass. They could have scored 30 last week if Saquon doesn't smartly slide instead of going into the end zone on that last drive. So you're really potentially looking at this Giants offense scoring 30 points back-to-back weeks. That's coaching. This is what good coaching looks like. Shout out to Mike Kafka. Shout out to Brian Dable. They are coaching the heck out of these players. They are getting the most out of them. This is the best that Daniel Jones has ever looked. Saquon is on pace for some of his rookie year numbers. The offensive line today, they're already struggling, and they've already lost players, and it's just they lose Bredesen, they lose Evan Neal, and boom, boom, boom. They scored 10 points in the fourth quarter to win the football game. And this team embodies the coaching staff. Never quit. Never give up. Never stop fighting. And it's amazing. So now get to the wide receivers. This was a tough one today for the Giants. The wide receiving core did not play well at all. It started very well with Darius Slayton catching the 32-yard touchdown from Jones. You're sitting there, you're thinking this is going to be a big game. Going to score 30 points. Jones going to have another big game, which he did. But the receivers were absolutely no help. Wan'Dale Robinson had a good game. He had 6 catches for 50 yards. He was the standout. Darius Slayton had 3 for 58 and a touchdown. He did have a couple drops. The drops he did have were defended very well. I want to put that in there. But you have, Richie James had a drop. Marcus Johnson had 2 drops. Hudson had a drop. It really hurt this team. And, makes you wonder, when the offseason comes, if the Giants don't make a trade in the season, how do Giants go about fixing this? They have to fix the linebacking core, have to fix the receiving core. Those are the two main concerns of opportunity. I know fans want to say the running back, quarterback, we gotta start over or continue to rebuild. There's plenty of holes on this team where you don't need to reset at quarterback and running back right now. You could bring Barkley back. If you want to tag him. You could maybe use Jones as a bridge quarterback vision right now if you don't fully believe in him, if you're Joe Shane. But there's plenty of holes to fill. And right now, the quarterback and the running back of this team are the stars, and they are carrying this team. And you've seen it today. Those two players, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, almost accounting for 500 yards of total offense. This was an offense last season and the year before that couldn't get out of their own way, struggled to sustain drives, couldn't make anything happen late in the game in the fourth quarter. So salute to the coaching staff. Awesome job. What's next if you're the New York Giants, right? You're 6-1, 4 wins in a row, 5 fourth quarter comebacks. Tough game on the road today. You come back, you fight through the injuries, you fight through the adversity, and you got Seattle next week. Seattle on the road, and not going to be an easy game. And I think the Giants have showed none of their games this year are going to be easy. Before the game, I did say that this was going to come down to the last drive. It did, but that wasn't some genius guess by me. That's kind of been where the Giants have been at so far with how their games have been played. Everyone's been pretty much a nail biter, and you go into Seattle. The Seahawks are, we'll say a mediocre team to be nice. But you're going on the road. Obviously playing in Seattle is not easy with the 12th man that they have there. And when you go in there 6-1, now the funny thing is, as of now, it looks like the Seahawks are going to beat the Chargers, which that's going to be a huge win for Seattle. And Seattle is 3-3, at the time of this recording. They're up on San Diego right now at the time of this recording. Seattle could be 4-3 in that game. So it's going to be another tough game for the Giants. The Seahawks have really got some life out of Geno Smith, which has been, a revelation for them. They have a pretty good running game. We'll obviously detail Seattle a little further, but that's what's next for the Giants. You see the bye week eventually on the horizon. It's almost like you want the bye week to be now. You really pray and hope that Daniel Bellinger, Ben Bredesen, and Evan Neal are okay. Giants haven't had luck with quick comebacks from injuries. Always seems like when the Giants have injuries, it's always bad news afterwards. So you kind of sit back, you hold your breath. But at the end of the day, you enjoy this W. This New York Giants football team is not only the story of the NFL right now, they are a team to be contended with. I don't want to hear about Cinderella stories and, this team came out of nowhere and, when is the other shoe going to drop? This is a smart football team, a tough football team, a well-coached football team. It's a team that has players that have something to prove in Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. And they have a quarterback that's coming into his own, to be frank. Daniel Jones can run the football with authority. He can make every throw on the field. Really what held Daniel Jones back so far in his career were the turnovers, or the stigma that him improving on his turnovers the last couple of years was because he wasn't throwing deep and the coaching staff didn't want him to throw the ball. Well, you've seen the last few weeks, he's been in positions where he's had to throw the ball, and Daniel Jones has come through. Daniel Jones is no longer the laughing stock of the NFL. The Giants are no longer the laughing stock of the NFL. And they're not the Cinderella story of the NFL. This is a team that could punch you in the mouth. This is one of the best rushing teams in all of football. They have a dual threat in their quarterback and their running back. They have playmakers on defense, even though defense has been a struggle. They have guys that can make plays, not going to beat themselves. So the Giants need to be contended with. And if you're a perennial playoff team in the NFC, I guarantee they have their eyes on the New York Giants right now. If this team can start to get healthy, if they can get Tony back, if some of these offensive line injuries are not that bad, if they can get a corner or two back, whether it's Flott or Robinson, they're going to need it. This team is going to be tough to contend with down the stretch because teams that don't beat themselves and teams that could run the football with authority are the hardest teams to beat. And that's what the New York Giants are right now. And they're well coached. They got Brian Dable, who's probably going to be coach of the year if this continues. Obviously, you're still only 7 games in. But 6 games is a pretty large sample size. And the Giants have beat the Packers, who are a perennial playoff team. The Ravens, who are a perennial playoff team. They beat Tennessee, who was a perennial playoff team, on the road opening day. So they've had some good victories over good opponents. They get some style points for that. The wins themselves might have not been pretty, but they've beaten good teams, and they haven't beat themselves. That's the key here. They have a tough NFC East stretch that starts late November, December, where I believe they play 4 straight NFC East opponents. That's going to be big in deciding what happens down the line. But this is looking like a playoff team. And if you look at the statistical data of records made to make the playoffs, teams that are 6-1, I want to say it's like over 85% chance they make the playoffs. So as long as this team could stay healthy and stay in one piece, they really have been stricken with injuries all season long for many seasons now. This year is no different. This team could really make some noise. They're still in a rebuild, yes, but there's no reason you can't rebuild, win in a rebuild. And Joe Shane said it himself during the offseason. We're going to rebuild, but we want to be competitive and win while we're rebuilding. It sounded like pie in the sky when he said it, but give Joe Shane credit. He's made the moves, and give Coach Dable, Coach Kafka, and Coach Martindale the credit. They've coached these guys up. They're getting the most out of these players. Dexter Lawrence is out of this world this season. He's having an all-pro type year. Saquon Barkley is back to form. Daniel Jones is having a career year. There's several players you could talk about in that regard. Kayvon Thibodeau as a rookie is starting to come on, right? Evan Neal was starting to play some good ball before he got hurt. So you see a team that's in unison, a GM that has the correct vision, who gets the right players for the coach, for his system, for his plan. And you're seeing a team that's well coached, disciplined, hungry, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, doesn't have a lot of penalties, doesn't beat themselves. And that's a scary football team. But that's it for today's show. Thank you for tuning in. New York Giants are 6-1, 4 wins in a row, 5 fourth quarter comebacks. Make sure you stay tuned, stay locked in to Tommy's Takes, Tommy G 105 on Twitter. Stay tuned to Giants Country's content. As the season heats up, we're going to heat up right along with it. And who knows where this season takes us. Peace.